Welcome. I'm Shaun Francis, host of the Eat, Move, Think podcast, and really delighted to have the Medcan design team here with me today. So Laura Jones, welcome from HOK, and Eric Giberson, who is the general manager of our new location, Oakville. Previously was in charge of all physical spaces in hospitality at our 150 York location, and still has his hand in those aspects of our business, but also responsible for, with Laura, the build out of Oakville, which is really the template for all new Medcan locations. So welcome both. I thought we would just talk today a little bit about the journey that we've been on. And Medcan has specifically, we've been evolving, and we have legacy space, of course, in downtown Toronto. But with our new locations, we wanted to be really purposeful with the look and feel, so that they're not conventional medical spaces. And we've been working with HOK on this for many years, and one of the benefits is that in addition to being a great design firm, they're global and also do healthcare. So we're bringing in a lot of different experts on this journey. So with that, maybe I would just turn it over to the both of you to describe what we've embarked on with Oakville and how that process went.
Sure.
Yeah, I think the process started with Refine, actually, at 150 York, which was our first project with HOK and Laura in terms of developing some of the Medcan design language.
Yeah, so that was 2017, and it was a brand new look for Medcan. It was really exciting. That's right downstairs. I think we'll look at it a bit later. And it was really just pushing Medcan forward to where they wanted to be and looking at new elements and new expressions, kind of breaking away from what the typical space is up on the clinic floors. And as Shaun said, it was a really good opportunity to take our hospitality experience and blend it with our medical experience and come up with a really functional space. It was a renovation in place, so there were some challenges, but we got through it, and I think it was a great result. So fast forward to 2020, yes.
2020, yeah.
Peak COVID. Looking at designing a space that was the evolution of Refine in Oakville, a really wonderful space that looked across the lake, looked at the Toronto skyline. We knew that was important to kind of tie it back to the Medcan here. And then being really creative in how we would push it forward, how we could start with brand new space as opposed to renovation, what we could incorporate, looking at wellness, looking at that point, maybe some COVID touch points just because of timing, and also incorporating the fitness element into it. So there was a lot to go through, a lot to distill, and I think we came up with a really great solution.
Yeah, I think we were able to bring a lot of the success from Refine to Oakville with some minor tweaks. And I know in terms of the biggest difference would probably be natural light,
yes,
with Refine being on a ground floor retail location. And Oakville has plenty of natural light. And then I guess modifying some of the color palette as well.
Yeah, just warmed it up a little bit. And I think there's a lot of elements in there that can roll out over, different size spaces and programs in the future.
Laura, you looked at other healthcare providers across this journey. And, where do you see people going in healthcare, and, does that diverge at all from what Medcan is doing?
No, some of the more progressive layouts, I think, are in line with Medcan. Having flexible spaces that can function for different types of medical care. That's something that we worked with you a bit on kind of pre-Oakville as well, in terms of how how you could have the most offering in the smallest footprint. And I think Oakville is a good example of that, with that kind of open area in front of the clinic rooms that the doctors and nurses can gather, so they're not always tied to a room.
And what about use of materials? I mean, I think we are somewhat unique and more contemporary.
Yes. Yeah, more contemporary. Keeping the clinic rooms nice and warm. There's like use of wood, lighting, incorporating art, some design forward furniture. Is a really welcoming environment, I think, when you're in those spaces, but then also the connective spaces that get you from room A to room B as you go throughout your series of appointments are very gallery-like. I mean, that's not something you see very often. So it's not typical.
Yeah, I think one of the besides the overall first impression of the Oakville space, one of the nicest compliments is when clients ask us for the specs or where we sourced the furniture, which I think in a traditional healthcare environment, that simply wouldn't happen. So almost, I wouldn't say on a daily, but a weekly basis, I'm sharing our color palette and certainly where we've purchased a lot of our furniture.
I mean, the goal being it should not feel like a medical facility or a traditional one.
It's a living room.
Yeah, it's a living room. It's residential, I think, is the direction we've taken. And it translates to the functionality of the pieces, but also, the comfort in creating a space that clients are able to relax in and enjoy during their time at Medcan.
And I know even on the fixturing and the furniture, we were pretty deliberate on comfort and functionality. Like, what's it like to sit in them, for example? Eat in them.
We've spent a lot of time discussing the functionality of the furniture and how it supports, our clients from mobility to, you're right, comfort and how you can eat in them. The other aspect from I guess a facility operator would be the functionality, how easy it is to clean and maintain its, look and feel in terms of always looking new and purposeful.
Mm-hmm. And also a variety of solutions that suit different users. Like you have lots of chairs that have arms that people with mobility issues can use for leverage to get up and down. The tables that are used in the different cafe spaces would facilitate wheelchair users if they needed to. So really, it's just making sure that it is functional for anyone who could walk in.
And you also have designed the space that it can showcase our art, which I think has been a major piece of the decor as well.
Yeah, that's in the early days, because we have to flag all the walls for the electrical trades to not put stuff on. So it's built in from the beginning.
We were able to. It was actually a fun exercise with Medcan having over 250 pieces of art in our collection. Having to handpick certain pieces to showcase in Oakville was a fun exercise in which we partnered with Marshall Webb, our curator, and were able to really pick up on a theme of nature, bringing in as much as we could in terms of that aesthetic in the art, and then being able to have a purpose for each piece in terms of its anchoring walls or hallways.
And what's the feedback from clients?
The clients are intrigued in terms of the art. I think it's, again, really is unique in terms of medical space, having quite an impressive art collection being showcased in the hallways and exam rooms. We actually went through the exercise of adding QR codes to each of the art plaques, which gives our clients another level of engagement with the artists or even the process in which the piece was created.
Do you see people using them?
I do.
Cool.
I do myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do.
No, it's fun. You can always learn something, right?
Yeah, and it's a great reference to, like I said, examine the piece, or it gains entry into our entire collection. So clients are definitely interested.
And what about the we showcase our food as well. Maybe you can comment on that and how you design the spaces, and maybe a bit
Yeah.
about how we present our food.
Yeah. So there's a couple of areas where there's basically a purposeful empty countertop with some display fridges underneath. And what that allows is for the food to be showcased in the fridges, but then if there's additional grab and go, or if your program evolves into further items, there's lots of room for that to expand up on the top of the counter. The space does have a functional catering, it's small, but functional space in the back that can support that effort. So there's storage specifically for those food items, coffee, also like housekeeping, like dishwashers for cutlery, plates, etc.
Yeah, we took a real look at the space, not just from a clinical setting, but from a hospitality setting. And we're able to add a lot of industrial type materials to help support that service delivery. And whether it's day-to-day clinic operations or just the event, we held an event with 80 attendees just last week, and we're able to utilize the space quite well and made it quite comfortable for everyone. And in very quick order, we're able to flip the space back to a clinical setting.
Yeah, that was part of the intent, that it could host functions very easily, and I'm glad that it's able to do that. There's also a retail area that's flexible as well that can support Medcan's other business lines for retail offerings or as that grows.
What about lighting? Talk to me about
Lighting. There's a variety of lighting in the space. Firstly, in some of the clinic rooms and the dermatology rooms, there's specialized lighting that is there for a purpose. But elsewhere, we tried to keep it more hospitality, residential in vibe. The color temperature of the LEDs is not too high, so it still kind of has that warm residential look to it. But there's a variety. There's ceiling lighting, wall lighting, different heights of lighting. And I think that really helps to come across as a warm and comforting space, as opposed to just keeping, everything up on the ceiling. You get a certain lighting level and move on. So I think it turned out very nicely. And I think especially in the fitness area, there was some elements or some opportunities to introduce some fun elements with different types of lighting that served their purpose, but also added some visual interest.
So I know, Laura, and one of my challenges to you is to create a space that combine lots of different types of materials, but also I didn't want it to feel like a medical clinic, even though it is.
Mm-hmm.
And can you talk to our listeners about that and the challenges in doing that?
Sure. So I think just to start, to kind of set the stage, anytime we start a project, we always want to understand from the client and the user group what the desired outcomes are, so that we can work with them kind of very high level, big picture, to make sure we're going down the right path. And I mean, that can be, looking at different words, looking at different images, trying to set the stage, trying to see if we're on the right path or not. And so we did that with the Medcan team. And that was probably about a 6 to 8 week process to just kind of nail down kind of what those drivers were, what the preferred palettes were, kind of what the space would look and feel like, before we started figuring out how the medical aspect was going to work or how the hospitality aspect was going to work. But that just set a really good framework for moving forward. So, looking at wellness and being mindful, and how the space is, integrated with current technologies and how people would use the space, all very important. So that kind of sets the map so that when we start developing in detail through space planning or choosing final material selections, there's always kind of a course correction back to where we started. So that will give you a very strong result at the end, no matter how big or small the design project is. If you have a really good rule book at the beginning and you stick to it, the end result will be something that you'll love. So, I mean, people can take that little tidbit back to their homes, but for Medcan specifically, the quality of light was very important. The hospitality aspects were very important. One thing we like to look at is for spaces to be thoughtful. People don't need to think too hard to use them. So, for example, you sit down in the lounge and your phone's dead. Oh, well, there's a USB outlet right here. I don't need to go looking for that. I can just, plug my phone in. I can get on with what I need to do. There's a lovely view. There's, artwork and other elements throughout the space. So that's kind of the big picture, how you would land in the space and you would be greeted and you would be comfortable. But then as you go throughout your appointments, you need to, again, it needs to be intuitive. You don't want to be overthinking it. So repeating a lot of the same elements just so it's not jarring. Not having a lot of transitions of materials between spaces, so it flows very nicely. Really intuitive wayfinding. We did the signage program as well, just so that people would know how to get throughout the space. And then just reinforcing all that with a material palette that was just very natural and soothing. Not a lot of bright colors, just a more soothing palette. Drawing on concrete, warm oak, light oaks, very simple paint palette, like a dark tone and a light tone. Some people are comfortable in a light environment and some people are comfortable in a dark environment. So there was kind of those two opposites. You could kind of gravitate to where you needed to be. And and I think it was very successful in the end. We did spend some time with a stylization scope, which involved us kind of curating a little more specifically with some of the open shelves and, objects that would reinforce that look and feel in that environment. And again, make it more residential.
And what about choice of color?
Choice of color. So I think we learned, I think we were very bold with Refine, the first space that we did here, and that was very black and white. So when we moved to Oakville, we warmed it up just a little bit and went more into the dark blue. But the dark blue is still reads as a neutral in the space, I think. But it just gives it an added layer of warmth, and it supports the furniture palette, the artwork selections, and just, life going through the space in general.
Laura, we're now opening in Port Carling and Collingwood and have more in plan. How are you evolving these learnings for our new spaces?
Okay, so Port Carling's been a lot of fun. It is 370 square feet. It's about as mini as a Medcan as you're going to get. It's in a building that is a very, residential in construction. So it was basically just how do we take that feeling and look and feel and color palette and distill it right down into, for lack of a better term, you have a room. It's one space. There's a couple of exam rooms off of it, but I think we did it. You'll see soon. It's got some nice furniture going in, color, and it has a really lovely deck out front. So hopefully you can use that as part of the waiting area and hospitality. So that's Port Carling. As we move on to Collingwood, Collingwood is in plan. It's actually very, very similar to the main clinic space of Oakville. And it's kind of funny to look at it, because it's like you just took this piece of Oakville and shrunk it by 60%, and it is basically the same components. So one thing we try to do when we design spaces, when we know that the client is going to be applying that to multiple locations, is to take a kind of kit of parts approach and kind of look at how you create these components. And I think Collingwood is a good example of how that was successful from Oakville. A lot of the millwork is the same. So there's some efficiency there in terms of being able to reuse the designs for those, and just tweaking it in some of the areas that are a bit different. But I think Collingwood will be nice, and I think that's coming online later in the year, and will provide a service to that region.
Laura, are there any design elements that from your experience working with us and other clients that promote wellness and just a sense of happiness and stillness in a space that resonates and you think might be actionable for some of our listeners?
Sure. So I think when we talk about wellness in a space, that can apply very differently to many different people. What does one think of with wellness? So I think if you look at it a little more broadly and you look at your space, there's a balance of dark and light. So in your own home, you might feel that certain spaces, to suit your mood, you might want to have them in a darker tone, and that's okay. You don't, it might be a little bit pushing the boundary for some people, but dark paint can be very soothing in a residential setting. Another element is, if you look at your furniture, we were very careful with Medcan to curate the furniture selection. It wasn't like, here's the big sofa and the little sofa and the matching side chair. It was all picked to complement the various pieces and provide a soothing setting. And then also lastly, we started this very big picture. We kind of mapped it out about how all the elements could speak to each other and be friends with each other, so to speak. So I think if you were to take that approach as well, it would be successful, as opposed to only looking at one space at a time. So another thing to keep in mind is kind of master planning. And I know that sounds a little bit corporate, but kind of thinking of the big moves you want to make in your home in advance, and then trying to fill those, as opposed to, maybe just randomly selecting of things that might not have longevity for your space.
Thank you both. Really appreciate you joining the show today. I knew when I challenged you to build something amazing in Oakville that we really build on what we did with Refine, and certainly much improve over our 150 location, which is going to get an update here in the not too distant future. But when I first walked into Oakville, I was really blown away. The quality of what you've built there is just incredible, and that feeling that you've described, I think, really resonates with our staff and our clients. And I'm really proud of that location and looking forward to using that as inspiration for both the renovation here at 150 and also for future Medcan locations. So thank you both for your time today.
Great. Thanks, Shaun.